Maverick News. The world is watching. In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Strange Bedfellows, episode 27. I'm Lori Spencer, along with my good friend Rick Walker of Maverick News up there in Canada. Good evening, Rick. How's it going? How the hell are you?
Not bad, eh?
Not bad, eh?
In the land of the snow and ice.
Is it snowing up there?
A little bit. It's actually been the mildest winter I can remember. I have not yet had to shovel my driveway where I live.
Wow.
Yeah.
For Canada, that's pretty amazing. It is cold here, but at least we don't have any snow. It's in the 20s, and I'm all bundled up, and it's great to be spending time with you.
I have to confess, there was one snowfall, and I just didn't bother. So
I'm not going out, so to hell with it.
Like, screw it. I'm just too lazy. It'll melt by spring.
That's right. Well, you know, in this part of the country, it melts by 10 a.m. the next day. It's gone by noon. I don't have to shovel anything. Just kind of wait. Don't go out before noon. Sleep in a little bit.
Well, we've been fortunate here.
Well, it has been a hell of a week, big news week, but all over the world. But the big story here, I think, the biggest story in the United States, of course, has been the trials and tribulations of Donald Trump. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. And, you know, at this point, we need a team of lawyers just to keep up with his court calendar and all these cases going on. And he's got 91 felony charges, and then he's got all these civil cases, and I can't keep up. So
it's got to be a record.
Who's ever heard of such a thing, right? For even a private citizen, let alone a former president.
Well, it's huge. Wow. If Donald Trump's going to do something, he's got to do it bigger than anybody. Huge.
It's got to be huge. So I called up the smartest legal analyst I know to try and make sense of it all for us. And this week, it's a pleasure to welcome back our friend Tyler Nixon. We haven't seen Tyler since episode 16 last October, and a lot's happened since then. If you're unfamiliar with Tyler, he's a longtime friend, personal attorney to Roger Stone, very connected to the Trump orbit. He's also the host of the brand spanking new Tyler Nixon Show on the TNT radio network. Tyler, he has an interesting background. Of course, he went to Georgetown University, University of Virginia Law School, served in the U.S. Army's Berlin Brigade, did a tour of combat duty in the first Iraq War. Later, he served as a staff assistant to former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, worked on the presidential transition team for President George W. Bush back in 2001, and was also on my guy, Republican Ron Paul's presidential campaign back in 2008. He was part of that Ron Paul revolution. So Tyler's a good friend, great guy. We're happy to have him back. Welcome, Tyler. How are you?
It is fabulous to be with you this Saturday evening from
Thanks.
Colorado, where we've been shoveling snow, and frankly, and when it comes to Donald Trump's case of Donald Trump, a lot of bullshit we've been shoveling out of our way. But I digress. It's great to be with you.
Wonderful to have you back, my friend.
And if I'm the greatest legal analyst, I mean, I'm kind of a legal one-man gang, but I mean, you must not know many legal analysts.
Yeah,
so
well, it's a short list, but you're at the top of it, my friend.
Well, thank you.
So before we dive into Trump, tell me about your new show on TNT. I'm really excited for that.
Well, the Tyler Nixon Show actually started in late 2013, believe it or not, on terrestrial radio in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, WGMD, which is a Fox affiliate, 92.7 FM. And I interviewed Tucker Carlson back when before he was even, I think he was like a Fox News morning sub or Fox like Saturday morning news.
Oh yeah, he used to do Fox and Friends in the mornings.
I mean, he was just, and he was running the Daily Caller with Neil Patel, and so I did a bunch of. It was a Saturday morning, 10 to 2, 4-hour straight show, and I'd have these long form interviews with like Bar McClellan from all these Phil Nelson, who wrote LBJ, the mastermind of the JFK assassination. Roger, that's where I met, actually, how I began hooked up with Roger Stone, actually. So, and I moved out west and sort of had to leave that behind. And the Tyler Nixon show's been dormant until just very recently, last month. I basically hooked up with, I had been appearing on TNT Radio, Today's News Talk, as a guest, probably for almost a year and a half. And one thing led to another, and they said, "Hey, we'd like you to do a show." And I said, "Sure, I'd love to do a show." And the Tyler Nixon Show has come roaring back to life, and airs 2 p.m. Eastern weekdays on TNTRadio.live, and we've been having a lot of fun and getting a lot of interesting guests, and I anticipate having a lot more. Both of you are, of course, invited to come on, and
cool.
We're just getting everything scheduled up, but look for the invitation coming.
Oh, that'd be great.
We'll have some great conversation. It's an exciting new network, a very pro liberty. Well, let's put it this way. This tells you everything I think you need to know about TNT Radio. This coming week, Julian Assange is facing his returning to the UK. Royal Court of Justice, or whatever they call it, for the appeal hearing on his being extradited to the United States, which I think anybody who has a conscience and a soul opposes vigorously, because he'll be thrown into probably the supermax gulag out here in Colorado and never to be heard from or seen again on clearly ridiculous, trumped up, crazy charges, considering he's really just a journalist and a truth teller. Right. And we'll be covering that. The network will be in London with round-the-clock coverage of that hearing, as well as
great.
Interviews and So I mean, and cool. It's an Australian-based network, so obviously, Julian's Australian, and but it has a really great crew of people, and I'm excited to be there, and but I'm also very excited to be here on Strange Bedfellows. So,
TNT really is a great network. I encourage everyone to listen to it. There aren't too many talk radio networks that are so committed to the truth, to liberty. They have so many wonderful hosts. I've been a guest on a lot of TNT shows, and I was so happy to hear that you were joining the lineup at TNT Radio. So congratulations on the new show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So, are you ready to dig into to Trump's week in court?
Any day, every day, all day, every day. It never ends.
Where do we start? Holy cow!
Well, we could work our way back from the Georgia craziness if you had a chance to see any of that, boy.
Oh man, Fani Willis? Is it Fani? I call her Fani. Is it Fani or Fani?
They say Fani, and I'm like, Fani. I'm like, she's not Indian, okay? It's Fani.
Yeah, I'm from the South. We would call her Fanny.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for pointing that out.
Leave it to a Southern gal. It's Fanny, damn it.
I don't know what it is. Like Trump always has, was Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, his lover, he called him. Well, same situation, It's Fanny and her lover, Nathan.
It's just an unbelievable
on the loose
story.
Down in Fulton County. It's just, I mean, if I wasn't part of the justice system, on some level, I would just be, oh my God, it's just awful. I mean, it's really, it's such, and we can get into that. I don't want to hijack and start.
Let's start there. That's as good a place as any. Well, it was certainly the most fascinating testimony of the week, and we got cameras inside the courtroom, so we got to watch the drama unfold.
I'm sure that many people in Georgia are cursing, or certainly the Fulton County DA's office are cursing that decision. And it really is, just as someone who is, ethical and believes in attorney ethics, and certainly most of all believes that prosecutors have as is frankly the Code of Professional Responsibility in every state, as well as the ABA, holds that prosecutors have a higher duty and higher ethical responsibilities in conducting themselves. They, because they hold the power of destroying someone's life in their hands.
Right.
and so they have to be beyond reproach. I mean, you can't even have the appearance of impropriety. and it should, I would think it reflects on a state or a jurisdiction or any sort of a court system how they deal with wayward prosecutors. I've often said, number one, that I don't think prosecutors should. I know this is sort of my dream proposal, but I don't think prosecutors should ever be allowed to run for any higher office or be judges, because the ones that I've seen, the way they operate, it's a very much a ruthless, notch in my gun belt kind of mentality. It's all about getting the conviction, whereas, really, let's face it, it should be a probative process and ultimately towards justice, not just mere law enforcement for the sake of it, and not just merely winning for the sake of it. But I think, unfortunately, the system produces people who, they usually have designs on higher office. In this case, it's interesting because obviously the DA position is, in a sense, the higher office, which, unfortunately, I guess I've never advocated electing DAs, but I mean, if you're, I would say judges and DAs should not be elected, frankly. And this is a perfect example of it, because I think you get, unfortunately, in what we have today in our political environment, are people who are, for lack of a better term, very parasitic opportunists who are chasing a job where they feel they don't have any accountability, but on election day, and they can basically bamboozle the voters and slide themselves into these offices. And these positions are far too important and far too consequential and grave in their nature to just hand off to any person who can step up with a pulse. I don't know that they require you to be an attorney. Obviously, in Georgia, Ms. Willis and obviously Mr. Wade, they are attorneys, which I hate to say it, I find that shocking as well.
Me too,
after their
honestly.
testimony.
Yeah.
This was just a really an embarrassing episode for the people of Georgia, for Fulton County, for that court, and for justice generally, because you think, I guess what I would say is what Mr. Wade certainly did is he opened his mouth and removed all doubt. If you thought this guy knew what he was talking about, and that he was some sort of a special prosecutor brought in, because they don't have anybody good enough in the actual DA's office, she's got to pay him close to $1 million to work on this case, and then of course as we found out, to go and meet with officials in the White House and bill 24 hours of time for it in one trip, I think it was. And boy, you got to get handed to Trump's legal team, but although I don't think it would have required much, but they totally, you want to talk about an implosion. These people just melted down. Wade, he was caught in probably lying thing, I think, at one point. And this is just unacceptable. You
and no perjury charges for them.
And exactly. And it's like, this is ridiculous. Of all the people who should not be able to sit there and lie and perjure themselves, not just lie generally, but to lie on the stand in open court, and think that they can get away with this, yet they probably will get away with it. Although, and then Fani gets up on the stand. Oh my gosh!
She was so arrogant. She had such an attitude on the stand,
right? And she thinks she's being homespun. Like, my daddy told me to, carry around $200 wherever you go in case things go wrong. You can get the hell out of there. And then her father, the Black Panther, gets on. He's even worse. You wouldn't have thought it could have gotten worse, but he was. And honestly, it's just very sad for the people of Fulton County, because as you know, I'm sure, as you both know, there are people dying in Fulton County jail on a regular basis, dying from whatever, beatings, neglect. Whatever the case, there's just violence in there. And certainly Atlanta is not exactly Mayberry when it comes to crime. It's a pretty rough place, and there's plenty of violent crime, and I'm sure a lot of property crimes, and people are terrorized as we are, unfortunately, in most American cities these days. Yeah. And it's for her to come up, and on top of that, on top of obviously the neglect, I think the political or the partisan nature, the obvious partisan nature of the case brought against Donald Trump, not just against Donald Trump though, but against 19 other people who are many of whom were his attorneys.
Yes.
So it's like these people, this woman and her crew, don't even have enough respect, in a sense, for the profession to say, you know what, we can pursue people we believe have committed crimes, but these are attorneys who were acting as attorneys. They weren't running around being like partisan swashbuckling, apparatchiks. They were doing their jobs as attorneys on behalf of their client as best they knew how, and they get sucked into this, not just any case of whatever, even a conspiracy, but RICO. I mean, you're talking like, the entire statutory scheme devised to get the mafia. And
yeah, the one that Rudy Giuliani used to such great effect, and now they're using that against Rudy Giuliani. It's crazy.
It really is such a disgrace. It really shows you how the thin line, it's not a thin blue line, it's a thin line that stands between, frankly, a system that's even moderately fair and close approximates justice, and just a complete banana republic style kangaroo court where just any sort of partisan nut job can get in there and start crafting charges and run it by some grand jury of sympathetic people of the same partisan stripe. And we're into the realm of third world country level system, a third world country level justice system. I can't even call it a justice system. It's like it's a prosecution system. I don't think anybody who has read the indictments, read the basis for these charges would not, sort of think, what the hell are they talking about? Like, where's the crime? They were calling around. I mean, first of all, even if you took it as that the exaggerated nature of the way they've posed the conduct committed by Trump and Mark Meadows and others in questioning the elections and questioning what the processes of trying to avail themselves, first of all, investigate it and avail themselves of any process they could to get to the proper result and the at least approximating a just result. This would be political activity. These are First Amendment protected rights, and I mean, really, I can't think of what more the First Amendment exists to protect than your ability to challenge an election and to pursue, and to frankly to say, yeah, this is bogus, and we have reason to believe this. I mean, they weren't just making this up out of thin air, regardless of the insane, the Democrat fascist Biden, toting narrative that this was the cleanest election and most secure election. That is utter poppycock. I mean, I've seen reams and reams of evidence, and it's all coming out now that there was absolutely vote rigging. In fact, just in Georgia alone, there's evidence that Raffensperger basically lied to Trump on that phone call when he said, this was a clean election. There's nothing to be found. No, there weren't, Mr. Raffensperger. There were upwards of tens of thousands of votes cast and counted from people who did not have legitimate or grounds to vote. They were from addresses where these people did not live or had moved away, and they were just overlooked and ignored. And this was, there was a ton of corruption, a ton of fraud, frankly, straight up. And no matter how much they scream it from the rooftops and try to paper it over and say this was all debunked, no, this wasn't debunked. We saw on film Ms. Shea and her running the same ballots through over and over. I mean, there's no question about it, and it shocks me because it's on film. You can see it. And there's no.
And they tell you don't believe your lying
exactly.
eyes.
I mean, before they had even seen the film, they had said, "Well, this was debunked a month ago in the original Georgia hearings that were held." And of course, and then you get this crock that 61 courts, or judges threw it out. 61 judges or courts didn't even hear the evidence or see the evidence.
Right.
And not to mention, if you have if you have fraud on this scale, that you're stealing, you're not stealing an election, you're stealing the presidency of the United States. And essentially you're stealing the government because the executive branch is the government, If you have that on that scale, do you think you're going to just uncover it in a matter of a few weeks? I mean, they use the time deadlines involved to run out the clock. And at the same time as they're literally shouting down and denouncing anybody who even questions the election. But I mean, even though the anomalies just on the face of it, without even digging deeper, I mean, in the middle of the night, 5 different states stopped the counting all at the same time practically. And then suddenly everything goes dark. And then boom, Joe Biden has this giant, you've probably all seen the graph of him leaping. It's like a hockey stick vertical jump. And suddenly, it's you're an insurrectionist. You're a traitor to the country if you even dare question the election. And this is the mentality that now is bringing, again, felony RICO indictments and charges of serious gravity against a former president and his attorneys. Just makes a total mockery of the system to me. And these people are, I mean, I hate to say it, Fani Willis and those who perpetrated this, they are the criminals. Because to subvert the justice system, I've often said before, there's to me no worse criminal than a corrupt prosecutor who denies the very possibility of justice in order, for whatever reason, and to screw somebody to the wall to get a conviction, whatever the case may be, and in this case for ulterior partisan motives that we now see coming out just how corrupt these people are. That Fani Willis, who literally openly ran on a platform of dirtying up her opponent, saying that who was the incumbent DA at the time, saying having sex with members of your staff will be unacceptable in my administration. She said this, I mean, word for word. I mean, it's like, honey, baby. I mean, come on now. What is going on? Like, I mean, and that's scary because that's like psychopathological level hypocrisy.
So do you think she will be removed from the case because of her relationship?
I think so. I mean, I think this, well, her testimony alone, I mean, was just shocking. I mean, her contempt for that court, if there ever was such a thing as contempt, that was it.
Can I show you a clip? I mean,
yes,
I know
please.
everyone's probably seen it, but let me just show you the level of arrogance. If you guys missed it this week, just wow. Take a look.
So let's just talk about what you did in preparation for today. Did you meet with Mr. Wade at all? Once the motion was filed, did you meet with Mr. Wade and talk to him about the motion that I filed to disqualify you?
On this first January motion?
Yes.
I don't know if you could say talked about. I probably had some choice words about some of the things that you said that were dishonest within this motion. So I don't know that it was a conversation. As you know, Mr. Wade is a Southern gentleman. Me, not so much.
Okay, but my question was, did you have a conversation with him?
I didn't have a substantive conversation.
You did not?
I read this motion, skimmed it more so, and I've probably said some choice things to him about some of the lies that were told.
Okay.
And been printed in the media because, we used to be in a day and time where you had 60 Minutes and people did stories and they verified information and you had this great reporting. But it seems today that a lawyer writes a lie and then it's printed for all of the world to see.
Well, I just want to make sure that you answer the question I asked, though. So my question was...
I'm going to object. Been asked and answered.
Overruled, Mr. Abadi.
I told you what happened. I read the motion. I am sure I told him what my opinion of it is.
Okay.
And past that, we had no substantive conversation.
You did not? Okay.
Is there something you didn't understand?
No, I just wanted to make sure that
Okay.
you did not have a meeting with him in the conference room to discuss the motion.
Next question,
No.
Ms. Merchant.
So in the conference room of my office within this week, you produced some financial document. That financial document was given to me, something, and I'm not even sure who was given it to him by me or Mr. Abadi gave it to me. And I think he showed me a document in our conference room. But as far as a substantive conversation, I don't believe I've had any conversation with him that is substantive related to this.
Okay.
I have had conversations with him since you filed the motion, but they wouldn't be substantive to this. He sent me very nice sermons that have been done. And so we've had conversations about, did you listen to that sermon? Things of that nature. And I would say they were in relationship to this because I think he did it to be kind.
Okay. Let's start back in 2019.
Yeah.
So you and Mr. Wade met in October 2019 at a conference?
That is correct.
Okay.
And I think in one of your motions you tried to implicate I slept with him at that conference, which I find to be extremely offensive. I stayed at that conference. Mr. Wade was my teacher. I did not meet him when he taught the class. I was standing outside talking to Lisa Reeves, who is a judge. Me and her were just having a conversation. Mr. Wade walks up. I think they hug each other. They have some brief conversation. She introduces us.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. We kind of thought that when you asked the question, you can answer the question, not a speech, so I object to the speech.
I agree.
I believe I'm able to explain my answers.
I believe she's able to explain her answer.
And that's
Ms. Merchant, that's okay. I can handle it. Ms. Willis, I'll ask you just listen to the answer, the question, and keep the answers confined to the question as best you can. I think you'll have more than enough ample opportunity on when the state was
Well,
able
it's
to
highly
follow
offensive
ours.
when someone lies on you, and it's highly offensive when they try to implicate that you slept with somebody the first day you met with them, and I take exception to it.
All right. Well, Ms. Willis, you'll have the opportunity to explain all of that when it's the state's turn to ask more open-ended questions.
Yeah.
Ms. Merchant.
Thank you, Judge. So again, my question was, you all met at that conference, though, right?
We did the meeting.
Okay.
He, as I stated, he taught the class. I did not actually meet him when he taught the class. I walked out of the class, and I'm not sure if it was that exact class or we had went to lunch, but we were standing in the vestibule, like outside of the class. Me and Judge Reeves were having a conversation. She had worked at a law firm I worked at back in 1996.
We're getting way afar. I mean, I don't mind her explaining her answers, but I literally just asked if they met at that
She's
conference.
explaining how she met Mr. Wade, which was exactly the question asked by Ms. Merchant.
It was-
These answers are more than appropriate.
Ms. Merchant, if you want more concise answers, perhaps you could lead the witness.
I will. Thank you, Judge. Isn't it true that you met Mr. Wade October 2019 at the judges
We
conference?
haven't gotten to the point where Ms. Willis should be treated hostile in this situation.
I think we
And
have.
I'm very
Mr.
much
Everybody.
want to be here, so I'm not a hostile witness. I very much want to be
Not
here.
so much that you're hostile, Ms. Willis. It'd be an adverse witness. Your interests are opposed to Ms. Merchant's.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Merchant's interests are contrary to democracy, Your Honor, not to mine.
All right, let's
Judge,
proceed.
I would just ask that
we
we...
can keep things moving. Ms.
Thank
Merchant,
you.
next question,
Thank you.
please.
Okay, so we've confirmed when you met. After that, isn't it true?
No, I need to explain this, and I think I get to explain my answers. When I met him, Judge Reeves introduced us. He handed me his business card. I'm unsure if I handed him my business card, but we exchanged information. He said, if you ever need any help, give me a call. And he walked to the parking lot.
So after that, you started dating shortly thereafter, correct?
That's a lie. That's one of your lies.
Okay. Do you know Robin Yurdy?
I know her as Robin Bryant. I knew her. So Robin did not go to my college. She went to the college of, I went to Howard University. She went to Morgan State. I met her through some people I knew. In college, we hung out a bit. Not much because she was in Baltimore and I was in Washington, D.C. But we hung out a bit. After college, I lost contact with her. I probably didn't see Robin again until maybe 7 or 8 years ago, a chance meeting here in Atlanta, but we did not have a consistent relationship from when I left college and came to Emory Law School here in Atlanta. But 8 to 10 years ago, just by happenstance, I ran into her.
So
she was in Atlanta.
You have been friends with Robin for 30-something years.
Did you hear my answer, madam?
Yes, and I'm asking if you've been friends with her for 30-something years.
I've known her for 30-something years. We certainly hung out and partied together in college. She was from the D.C. area. She would come home, we'd party together. Wasn't close, but she was certainly in the girlfriends that partied together. And then, like I said, I ran into her about 10 years ago in Atlanta, Georgia. But we didn't talk throughout that time period. I didn't see her. I didn't even know where she was. When I ran into her, I was surprised she was in Atlanta. And so, yes, I have known her probably since 1990, 1991, but we have not maintained a consistent relationship that whole time.
For the last 10 years or 5, whatever you'd like to classify it as, have you been friends with her?
I have not spoken to Robin in over a year. I certainly do not consider her a friend now. I think that she, there's a saying, no good deed goes unpunished, and I think that
Just wow. My Lord.
There's a lot of nuance in there. Well, we're not really friends, and I've known her for 30 years, but she's not my friend because, I haven't talked to her in a year. And what is all that? I honestly, I have trouble following it.
I honestly, they should just put petulant, arrogant psychopath, Exhibit A, as the Chiron underneath her. I mean, honestly, normally when you're trying to like hang somebody, for being a jackass, you have to, have different clips. Like, there was just 3 minutes of her testimony, and it's like she's blown all the, she's redlined, she's buried the needle. I mean, good God, I don't, and I didn't even recall that portion of it, but again, contempt of court. She's lecturing the judge.
Sassing the judge. She was literally sassing the judge the whole time.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
The takeaway for me is it's like, so how many times do you have to meet her before she sleeps with you?
Never on the first date.
Not the first. What about the second? Right. And do you have to buy dinner or like what? Like,
oh yeah,
we'll stop at Mickey D's. A little romance.
This is, it's crazy.
Burger King.
I mean, this person is an elected official who is the prosecutor, chief prosecutor for an entire county that's crime-ridden.
Yeah.
And this is what we get. I mean, this is like
that's the travesty.
I mean, seriously, like no respect for anybody, won't answer the questions, is evasive, is again petulant, is combative, has no respect for the court. I mean, just in her you would think she would want to, any prosecutor would want to say, represent the stature of their office and the gravity of their office in some manner in open court. I mean, she just did the opposite. I mean, talk about, wrapping yourself in the opposite of glory. That's right. Again, Exhibit A. And I mean, this judge is very mild-mannered and was very patient, I have to say. And but I have a feeling that he's not going to be, when he reflects on it, and the shell shock probably that he comes out of, that Ms. Willis is going to be removed. I mean, if not disbarred.
If there's any justice in Fulton County, she needs to lose her job. And I picked that particular exchange. I thought it was interesting because they're asking her if she met with Mr. Wade before coming in to testify, right? Mm-hmm. And she's saying, "Oh, we did, but we discussed nothing of substance." Right. And then she comes into court
for your lies. I'm like, this woman just concocted the biggest bullshit bunch of crap against a former president and 19 other people, innocent people who were mostly attorneys, and has dragged them in to be mugshotted and, given the whole 9 yards of a criminal defendant's treatment for merely, conducting what are First Amendment protected activities. And even beyond that, as in the case of the attorneys, poor Sidney Powell, who, pled guilty and relate. I mean, just, it's disgusting. It makes me sick to my stomach that this person, and guess what? She's not the only of her type that inhabit our system. Unfortunately, she's not a one-off. There are plenty.
Oh yeah, look at Letitia James. There's another story.
Or Alvin Bragg, for that matter.
Cut of the same cloth.
And Jack Smith. I mean, he's the roving psycho. We can shift into that, since I think we've had our fill of Fulton.
Oh wait, I'm not done with her though. Hang on a minute.
Yes, please.
I got some more to say. So they asked her, "Did you talk
in.
about anything of substance, before you came in to testify?" And she's like, "Oh no, we didn't. We were just exchanging some prayers and reading the Bible together." And then she comes in and looking like they literally just had a roll in the hay. Yeah, maybe really. Backstage. So because she comes in with her dress on backwards. Am I the only one who noticed that her dress was on backwards? The zippers in the front, and she's all rumpled, and her little pin is sideways.
And she's grabbing the mic and saying, and just like testifying to anything she wants, no, I don't appreciate your, oh my God, this woman's a prosecutor and an attorney. But actually, no, I have to say, because we're fair, we don't malign people wrongly. That dress actually is designed that way.
Oh, is it?
Yes. I only found this out. I was watching Tim Pool's show in the new what's it called, the millennial.
So they looked into this, right?
Yes,
they found the dress.
And apparently, it's a crappy Amazon available dress that has a zipper like that on both sides. So she wasn't.
Well, pro tip: wear a bra when you go to court, ladies.
Don't wear,
what was that all about?
Don't wear that.
I'm just
dress.
saying. Maybe she forgot to put it back on after the roll in the hay backstage.
Zipped it up wherever. Yeah.
She has to be ready in case he comes back from the parking lot.
All right.
Easy
Before
access,
we move
right?
on, I got to show you.
The verdict is what? Second meeting.
I'm thinking, second, third date seems more appropriate.
Well, I mean,
how dare you imply that I slept with him on the first date?
Yeah,
she's a lady.
and she I believe one of the witnesses was a lady who worked in the Fulton County DA's office and has been gone for I think a while now, maybe a year and a half or more, because she brought to the attention of Fani that one of the male, I guess, prosecutors or attorneys in there was talking, licking his chops at having a $450,000 federal grant that would come in, and they were going to spend it on laptops and iPads and tablets, and it was like, that's not what this money's for. And she brought it to Fani's attention, and 59 days later, Fani fires her.
Yep.
Not the guy who's going to misuse federal funds. So she's lucky. She's going to be lucky that the attorney. I mean, the only thing that might save her is the fact that there, a bunch of never Trumper rhinos shot through the entire state.
Right.
Whether you're, again, whether it doesn't, I don't think you don't have to be a Republican, Democrat. You can hate Donald Trump and still see what a travesty of justice and what a joke this is. And frankly, she just blew the whole case. I mean, Donald Trump, he must have some divine forces or something pulling for him, because his
it's the Trump curse, right? Everybody who tries to touch Trump, it comes back on them 100-fold every time.
Well, also the fact that, they're corrupt. They're just plain corrupt. These people going after him, they're deranged. There's Trump derangement. We've heard it talked about, and other politicians, but I honestly feel like there are people who I respected their opinion. I thought they were intelligent, thoughtful people who are totally out round the bend when it comes to Donald Trump. And I don't know what it is about this man that has broken a lot of people's brains, that to the point where I think it's a real condition, Trump derangement syndrome, like an actual diagnosable condition. And it's sad what it does to people. But
speaking of, did you see her meltdown when she really lost it in court? Did you see that part?
No. I had one eye. I was working, on a million of things. I had one eye on it, and was just sort of, every time I would pause to listen, I'm like, oh my God, is she still going? Like, it's not stopped. It's even worse now. Yeah, I have to go back. There'll probably be.
I'll show you this part. It's just a quick little clip, but she lost her shit in court.
Be very clear so that we don't mix words. I don't want to mix words in here. Mr. Wade is my friend right now. Mr. Wade, I would say, has been my friend since 2020. I think he started out as like a mentor and a professional colleague. He became my friend and somebody that I really respected. I feel very indebted to Mr. Wade for taking on the task of this job. And he is certainly my friend and one of the people that I respect the most. So if you ask about a personal relationship, I consider myself to have a personal relationship right now, Mr. Wade. I consider myself to have a personal relationship with Anna Cross. I consider myself to have a personal relationship with Mr. Abadi. I consider myself to have a personal relationship with Andrew Evans.
Okay, let me just clarify that.
I have a personal relationship with him as we speak right now. I don't think that's what you're asking. I think that's what you're asking.
When did your romantic relationship with Mr. Wade end? Did it end?
Me and Mr. Wade, we are good friends. My respect for him has grown over these 7 weeks of attacks. We are very good friends. I think, but for these attacks, it would have been a friendship that, as life goes, you would have stopped having. I think that you have cemented that we'll be friends to the day we die.
Let's.
Could we just have an answer to the question?
I can handle Mr. Sadow. Let's have it.
She asked about a personal relationship.
She asked when the romantic relationship ended. That's the question.
It's sometime in, I'd say late summer of 2023. So I don't believe me in, because this is what you're really asking about. This is the salaciousness of all of this, right?
No, I'm just asking about your romantic relationship, when you stopped dating.
I think that me and Mr. Wade, so he's a man, he probably would say June or July. I would say we had a tough conversation in August. And so that men in relationships at the end of physical intimacy, women in relationships when that tough conversation takes place.
And where, when did he come to, I guess, the condo? I'm not sure what you called it, condo apartment. Would he come and stay at that condo or visit you there? I'm sorry, visit you there.
What condo, what apartment? I want to be clear.
So not your house. I know you classified one as house and one as condo, so I'm trying to use those terms.
So but there's been more see, what you don't understand is because of this case, I got to move. And so I
need to... If you could ask a more precise question.
Yes, please, give me the time period.
Mr. Wade visits you at the place you laid your head.
When?
Has he ever visited you at the place you laid your head?
So let's be clear, because you've lied in this. Let me tell you which one you lied in. Right here. I think you lied right here.
Your Honor, I'm gonna
No. This is the truth.
Judge,
And
this
it is a lie.
is-
It
We're
is
gonna-
a
all
lie.
right, Ms. Willis.
You
Mr. Sano, thank you. We're going to take 5 minutes. Be back.
God.
So, in other words, you're still boinking him.
Sometime late this afternoon in the bathroom here in the courthouse, our relationship ended. Until
5 minutes ago.
Until we meet again.
We are
Oh
very
my
good
gosh.
friends.
This will be watched for years and studied for by psychologists and attorneys and
Yeah.
Donald Trump's a billionaire, and he's about to. I think he's about to clear something like $4 billion in value when Truth Social goes public. So I mean, I don't think he's concerned, but he could not buy a better situation. I mean, he couldn't pay $1 billion to have someone. I mean, you couldn't possibly devise a plot to take this woman down better than she did for herself right there on the stand. And it's such karmic justice, and just it's actual justice really unfolding before you, from her own mouth. And it's I don't think she survives it, and I don't think the case survives, because who's going to want to pick this up after this? I mean, right. I think it took someone as deranged as she is to actually bring these charges. I don't see any prosecutor who's worth a damn, and maybe there are ones like her, but I mean, even then, the taint of her is all over it. I think this goes away, and certainly you're not going to see anything happen before the election.
Well, to quote Jim Comey, no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Speaking of another psycho.
Yes. I'm sorry. I hit the button to play that clip too soon. You were in the middle of saying something, and I didn't mean to cut you off.
Not at all. No, I was just saying this will be watched for years. I mean, but where you won't see it, where you would have seen it maybe 20 years ago, is on Saturday Night Live. Maybe they are parodying it, but unfortunately, they won't. They're in the tank for the fascist warfare, welfare, whatever machine that runs the country, and so it's
the fascocrats. That's what we call them, right, Rick?
Exactly. Yeah, it hasn't been funny for almost a generation, frankly. But no, you won't see. I mean, I would love to see the parodies, though, if anybody out there still does real comedy, because actually, what am I saying? You can't parody. It's it's too
comedy
crazy.
gold.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of it is crazier and more hilarious if it weren't so sad than you could ever possibly mock. How do you? It's like how do you roast a meltdown? I mean.
All right, let's talk about what happened yesterday in New York. The civil fraud case. Trump got slapped with a $350 million judgment in that case, plus the legal fees, blah, 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 plus the judgment in the E. Jean Carroll case, which I think was, what, 83 million?
83.5, I think, million. That was just a defamation case. Not even counting the original case. This is, the sexual assault trial, which was a separate proceeding.
Yeah.
Trump's like,
it's confusing.
It's so funny if he just went on there and said, "Hand me my checkbook," like he says, "Here you go, Judge." Honestly, I think the worst was they're saying he can't do business in New York for
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. I mean, just another winner is that judge. I'll tell you, in that case. I mean, this guy is just a weirdo.
And his two sons not allowed to run the companies for 2 years. I think
so, and they got fined like $4 million and maybe $5 million respectively as well. I mean, it's just there was no trial in that case. He immediately pronounced that Trump was liable, or was people say guilty. I mean, it's not a criminal. These aren't criminal. Well, I mean, fraud is a criminal offense in but it's also civil. This was a civil side of fraud. I don't know how you go through a proceeding where every witness, every person involved who ever did business with him that was brought forward said, yeah, everything was on the up and up. We did our own due diligence. We got our money back, and we were all happy and walked away. And suddenly, oh, no. This mythical sort of ethereal, the people or something of New York were somehow offended or harmed by this, so we're going to pursue this man. I mean, this is just I mean, if there isn't a case for forget Donald Trump, but I mean, I mean, I would think he has to be elected to office. In other words, to vindicate justice in the face of these people who are mangling it. But they're really exposing themselves just left, right, and center to get this man. And it's like, you don't care about justice, you don't care about fairness or just basic decency, just to get this man, to stop the orange man. And I think it's driving people into his arms. I mean, honestly, I think there's people I've
His
heard
poll
that say-
numbers show that it's helping him. It's not hurting him. He just keeps going up in the polls. And, you brought that up, and it occurred to me on this case that they were giving him the Alex Jones treatment.
Oh, yeah.
What they did to Alex in the Sandy Hook case, where they just, they said, oh, well, you didn't comply with discovery, so you're guilty. And we just moved to the penalty phase of the trial without hearing the case on its merits.
Right.
Isn't that essentially what they just did here?
Yeah, no, it's exactly. And just as I think in the case of the federal case being brought, like what they did is, or they're doing to Trump is what they did to Roger Stone. I mean, just fabricate just a complete miasma of ridiculous pseudo charges. I mean, Roger did say at the time, he's like, I'm just the first test subject. Believe me, they will continue to do this, and Trump will be the ultimate target. And he was right. But no, you're absolutely. I mean, and then in Alex's case, I mean, what did they order? What did he have to pay? $1 trillion or something? I mean, it was so beyond, beyond any sort of. I mean, if there was any credibility left in the court, they completely threw it out the window with these, I mean, cartoonish level awards against Alex Jones. That shows how much animus do you have to have for someone to award something like that. This is beyond anybody's ability to pay in 10 lifetimes.
Well, that's my next question. Do you think that that Donald Trump will do the same thing Alex Jones did and file bankruptcy?
No, I don't think he'll ever do that. I think he can afford the $350 million if he really wants to. But I think gosh, I don't know. I mean, I would think you would hope the New York High Court, not the Supreme Court, but the Court of Appeals, what do they call the High Court in New York? I'm not exactly. I know the Supreme Court is actually the trial level court. Oddly enough.
Yeah.
But they had ruled against him previously, and I think it's unfortunately another partisan situation where it's like these people are in this rarefied bubble of, I want to say thought, but it's not even thought. It's like it's a cult almost, where it's like, we have to get him, and they're totally tuned out to like any sort of reasonable, like even just appearances of like what is reasonable, and I don't know. I mean, just it shocks the conscience what was done. There was no substantive trial on the merits. This judge was this judge is sitting there with Chuck Schumer's, I mean, and Donald Trump probably said it maybe indelicately, but I mean, then he tries to fine him for pointing out the fact that this judge is sitting on the bench and literally has his clerk sitting next to him, which is unheard of. I mean, you don't have that. Judges are supposed to be able to rule on things and to be able to understand the case without being prompted and having this clerk whispering in their ear, who, by the way, is as much a Democrat operative as you'll ever get in New York there. So, just yet another example of how these people will mangle what we hoped would be a fair, equitable justice system, and turned it into a zoo and a complete travesty.
A mockery of justice.
A mockery. No, that's true. Yeah. And then yet they act like, they're the high and holy inquisitioners for God or something. And it's sad. But again, Donald Trump has done nothing if not expose the really crooked people who inhabit the system and walk among us.
Indeed he has, and that's one of the things I like about Trump. Speaking of, he gave a statement after the ruling yesterday. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Well, thank you very much. It's a very sad day for, in my opinion, the country. A New York State judge just ruled, and he's crooked as you could get. And a lot of people expected something like this, but not for the amount. But this is a very dishonest man. This is a man that's been overturned already on this case 4 times. But a crooked New York State judge just ruled that I have to pay a fine of $355 million for having built a perfect company. Great cash, great buildings, great everything. It affects New York. It's mostly talking about New York, where we have a totally corrupt attorney general. She campaigned on the fact that I will get Trump, I will get Trump. Everybody's seen it, Letitia James. They've all seen it. Well, we'll be appealing, but more important than that, this is Russia, this is China, this is the same game. It all comes out of the DOJ, it all comes out of Biden. It's a witch hunt against his political opponent, the likes of which our country has never seen before. You see it in third world countries, banana republics, but you don't see it here. So I just want to say this. You build a great company. There was no fraud. The banks all got their money, 100%. They love Trump. They testified that Trump is great customer, one of our best customers. They testified beautifully. And the judge knows that. He's just a corrupt person. And we knew that from the beginning. We knew it right from the beginning because he wouldn't give it to the commercial division. This judge thought Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million, and it's worth anywhere from 50 to 100 times that amount. So we realized that. He ruled against me before he even got the case. He ruled against me. He said I was guilty. He didn't know what I was guilty of before he even got the case. And Letitia James, that's another case altogether. She's a horribly corrupt attorney general, and it's all having to do with election interference. There were no victims because the banks made a lot of money. They made $100 million. And by the way, I paid approximately $300 million in taxes as the migrants come in and they take over New York. I paid over this period of years over $300 million in taxes, and they want me out. Oh, let's see if we can get them out. These are radical left Democrats. They're lunatics, and it's election interfering. So I just want to thank you for being here. We'll appeal. We'll be successful, I think, because, frankly, if we're not successful, New York State is gone. People are moving out of New York State, and because of this, they're going to move out at a much faster rate. They used a statute. It's a consumer fraud statute that's never been used for a thing like this before. They used it on me because I'm running for president. I'm beating Biden by a lot. We're beating not only the Republicans, we're beating Biden by a lot. The poll came out today, we're up 20 points on Biden. If I weren't running, none of this stuff would have ever happened. None of these lawsuits would have ever happened. Nothing would, I would have had a nice life. But I enjoy this life for a different reason. We're going to make America great again. These are corrupt people. These are people that shouldn't be allowed to do the things they do. And they're using this as weaponization against a political opponent who's up a lot in the polls and always will be, because I'm competing with a man who can't put two sentences together, who doesn't know what he's doing. And we're heading into a third world war because of this guy. We have to win this election. They're doing everything possible to step in our way, but we're not going to stand for it. So thank you very much. We will get back to work. It's a ridiculous award. Listen, a fine of $355 million for doing a perfect job, for having paid back a loan with no defaults, with no problems. The banks were totally, at the trial they testified. We had an expert witness from the Stern School at NYU that made a statement. And I was very honored by his statement. He's one of the most respected people anywhere in the country for doing this kind of thing, expert wisdom. He said, this is one of the greatest financial statements I have ever witnessed before. And he talked about even the detail. So my numbers actually were extremely conservative. They saw this, so what the judge did is he brought down certain values like Mar-a-Lago, made it ridiculous. But the expert, after having all of this, testified it's one of the best financial statements he's ever seen. And I was honored by that. But I also knew we have a corrupt judge. He's not a respected man. And again, I said before, he's been overturned on this case by the appellate division 4 times already. It's a record. Nobody's ever been overturned on one case 4 times. And I think very importantly, and I think ultimately the most important, we've employed tens of thousands of people in New York, and we paid taxes like few other people have ever paid in New York. And they don't care about that. It's a state that's going bust. It's a state that's going bust because everybody's leaving. And it's all headed up by Biden, who's destroying our country. So this is Russia, this is China, this is what you've been reading about all your lives, and it's happening right here in our country. Thank you very much. We will stop it. We will make America great again. You have my word. Thank you very much.
President Trump, sell any of the assets to pay for this verdict? Do you plan to sell anything?
What a soap opera.
Yeah, I have to confess, you know, I love this man. I really do. I mean, I'm not one who's gets emotional, too emotional. But I mean, I get outraged, but I don't get emotional about politics. And people in them. But there's a few people like Ron Paul, as Laurie had mentioned. I worked for him because I deeply felt how righteous he was and is. And Ronald Reagan, as a young person, I felt was just a man of stature, and I really respected and admired him. But you have to just give it to Donald Trump. I mean, even one of these cases, anybody would be just, I mean, jumping through this. Any person, I don't care who you are, unless you're just a complete raving lunatic, to be treated to what he's been treated to. Again, and just in one of these cases, people will come unglued and people will go postal over stuff like this and being treated like this. And he has just been steady as a rock through the whole thing. And comes out and just he starts the hand thing, and I'm just like, I love it. I mean, he's entertaining at the same time as he's righteous, and he's plain spoken about it. I mean, he's not trying to sit there and split hairs about it. He cuts to the chase, and he's hardly perfect. I mean, he's an imperfect vessel. He's got his quirks. He has, an ego, I'm sure, that probably is in many ways deserved. I mean, considering, what he's gone through, what his successes, what he's bucked up to. I mean, I think he has to be reelected, or he has to be put back just so the country can say, enough. We don't buy any of your bullshit. You're not going to get away with what you've done to justice in this country. You're not going to turn it into a political weapon for a bunch of pygmies and psychopaths, as these people are, and weirdos and zealots and just people who are, I mean, just a total freak show that has exposed the essential rot within our government and how high it goes, how far it's willing to go. And he, I love him. I love him as a figure who has stood up to this, has not just gone up. He said, I could have gone off and had a fine life, never had a problem. And he didn't. He said, I can't let these people get away with this. And frankly, I hope the country doesn't either. And much as I love Bobby Kennedy, and I think he'd be great as a president, you cannot let them do this to Donald Trump or anybody in this country and get away with it. And I think the only way to vindicate it is for him to return to office and to clean house.
What is it about him do you think that they are really afraid of? Do they think that he's controlled by Vladimir Putin?
No.
Like, what is it? I don't get the intensity of the hatred.
You use the right word, okay? Controlled. It's that they can't control him, okay? And it doesn't. They can Vladimir Putin. They know that's total bullshit, and it's been bullshit from day one. It was concocted by frankly the deep state psychos who think that their decisions and their judgment is higher and more powerful and should be be able to supplant that of the American people. They did not. They thought the public got it wrong when they elected Donald Trump instead of. Can you imagine if Hillary Clinton was facing even one of these cases and what is being done to him was done to her? I mean, she was violently having a complete and total psychotic meltdown on election night when she lost. I mean, she was so bad she couldn't even come out and give a consent, couldn't even come out and speak just to thank the people who had worked for her, who were weeping in the aisles, there in the Javits Center. And she could, I mean, here's Trump just like rolling along, running, just saying, no, we're not going to let this happen. We're going to make our country. I mean, everything they've done has absolutely validated everything he said, no matter how you'd think it was outlandish to hear a couple of years ago, but no, it's all true of what he said about them, and he said it very plainly and succinctly, and they can't control him. And look, he's against every one of their. He didn't start any wars. The only president to not get us involved further into overseas armed conflicts or whatever interventions, militarism. He's not one of them. And frankly, I think they're fearful. It's weird because if they had left him just to his own devices, he probably would have gone along essentially with most of what they want. But they, I think, essentially fear him that he's going to come after them, or that he might start empowering people who oppose the deep state, the CIA run, the military-industrial establishment run cabal that thinks they control this country and control the world. And would have us, frankly, in a nuclear, exchange with Russia, of all countries. We spent the Cold War finally defeating Soviet Russia, and now they're trying to just bring it back. Meanwhile, the Chinese are eating our lunch. It's just, we've got people who are against him. I mean, it really is a cast of disturbed people. I mean, their view of things is so skewed, and I think in some sort of cosmic way, he's there to expose it all and to out them. And boy, he sure does so. Almost like it's almost cosmic the way it goes down. The way these people go after him in such grotesque ways and so unjustly, and are just completely exposed for what they really are. And that's I think his value, and that's why they don't. That's why they they can't control him, and they should really fear. I fear that they will know that if he gets reelected, what's going to be really curtains for them, that they will try to assassinate him. I don't think that's beyond any sort of reasonable conjecture or possibility. Frankly, I mean, look at they won't give Robert Kennedy Secret Service protection. They gave it to Nikki Haley. I mean, my God, his father and uncle, the president and the attorney general and senator from New York, assassinated, and they will not give him Secret Service protection. That is a disgusting, vicious, malicious outrage that it's unfathomable to me. It shows you that they don't care. That they would rather see him killed than present a challenge to their power.
Yeah. So do you think Donald Trump, if reelected, would start going after his political opponents, the people who have been using litigation to target him? Will he turn around and do the same things to them?
Oddly, I mean, as crazy as I don't think so. He's not a malicious person, as nasty as they say he is. You notice Donald Trump never lays the first punch. It's always the counter punch, and that's devastating, usually. And then they're like, oh, he's so mean, he's so this and that. It's like, well, don't attack him. Don't go after him. You won't get that thrown back at you. But I don't. It's funny because what happened in 2016. He said during the campaign, I'm gonna, you should be in prison about Hillary, and she should have been. She should be. She's completed numerous, very grave national security crimes. I mean, that email server open to any hacker that could dive in with like literally the highest level special access programs, like something like 19 of them on there. And Comey stands up and just rewrites the law, dismisses her. She runs around with impunity, talking about how we need to deprogram Trump supporters. It needs to be like, oh my God, like just shut up and go away, please. He, after the election, said basically said we're not gonna drag that out. We're not gonna hound these people, and essentially gave her a free pass and said, I don't want my presidency to be about pursuing my opponent and predecessor. And big mistake, unfortunately. It's like he just he didn't kill the viper when it was caught. He said, well, we'll just set it loose in the wild, and they just they've come back in droves. They came back with more against him, and but there will be. I don't know that there'll be persecutions, or there certainly won't be persecutions, but. I don't think the people around him, because they have gone so far in my view, in committing crimes in order to frame him, to go after innocent people, to warp the last redoubt we have in our civilization, our society, our courts, as other than obviously going to just pure violence and having civil breakdown, they've totally warped and corrupted these institutions, and they need to be prosecuted for it. And it's not a matter of retribution; it's a matter of justice. And it's not certainly. I don't think Trump himself would say, "I need to be vindicated," and for what they did to me. I guarantee you, would say for what they did to our system and for the disrepute and the corruption they brought to it. There needs to be a reckoning. And it doesn't need to necessarily be that they're prosecuted for it, but they need to be driven out of all these positions that they've bunkered down into. I mean, the DOJ and the FBI are infested. It's disgusting. One person steps up and says, "This is wrong, what you're doing," and he's driven out. Immediately suspended. I'm speaking of a friend, I think his name was, when they were going after the J6 defendants, or the J6 people, and he was saying, "Wait a minute, these are not like violent insurrectionists. This is a grandmother. This is whoever," and they immediately suspended him and then drove him out. I mean, and ruined his career. And that's the kind of people the fact that can happen to that person I mean, there needs to be a massive realignment in our government, and I don't know that anybody could do it besides Trump, unless he has a vice president, Robert Kennedy, which would be delicious. I mean, that would be beautiful.
I was just going to say that. I think Kennedy's the one who'll drain the swamp. And if Kennedy doesn't win and Trump does win, I hope that Trump will bring Kennedy in as his attorney general.
Yes.
Could you imagine another Robert Kennedy sitting in the Justice Department at a time like this? Wow.
Laurie, look, I think RFK has been a rebel in terms of his positions against his family's, frankly, sandbag, sort of typical, progressive Democrat rote, and the fact that they would come out and denounce him for that commercial in the Super Bowl, I thought was that tells you all you need to know about them. They're not even, they say the Democrats are no longer the party of Kennedy. Well, the Kennedy family is no longer the family of John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, who would have been would have certainly supported, a family member who's whatever you may disagree with him on certain things, but he is a righteous man and he's crusading for what's right. And he's thoughtful and he is studied and he's learned. I mean, this is a great man, and he's running a fabulous campaign that is grassroots, that is inclusive. He's accessible. He's a genuine human being, and I think he would be great as something like the Secretary of State. But as far as I don't think he has like the viciousness in him that, and I hate to say it, I mean vicious for justice in the sense that these people need to be dealt with in a very rough way.
Do you think he lacks that ruthless gene that his father had when he was Attorney General?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think even his father would have been like, well, look what they did to him. I mean, I think he, as ruthless as they say he was, he didn't realize how far they would go and how vicious and psychopathological they were and are. And they're even worse in many ways than that era of maniacs who thought, well, we just need to kill this guy, and did. But I don't think I think Robert Kennedy's far more. He doesn't have any illusions, that's for sure. But I think he wants to be, and righteously should not have to get dirty going after these scum. I think he would be a great Secretary of State and a diplomat, in other words. I mean, for his views on foreign policy and his understanding is unparalleled of any person I've seen running for president in a generation.
Yeah, that's interesting. Really, you're the first person I've heard suggest him for Secretary of State. I've had this idea in my head that he's got to be Attorney General, of course, because I want that swamp drained, and he's the best prosecutor I could think of.
Yeah, I mean, he was never a prosecutor. He prosecuted cases and is the only person running for president in a long time who was actually a honest to God hardball litigator, who's taken on environmental cases and won them against great odds, and he knows the law inside out. But I think it's going to require a certain level of, you need that guy who's willing to get bloody and dirty and take these people out, because they're going to throw everything they can up in their defense. But I think the Kennedy name in the world still holds, I think, if maybe not in the Democrat Party anymore, but certainly around the world, I think people still remember who John F. Kennedy was on some level. And I think he would be such a great emissary for our country around the world, and could really heal, because I think he would be taken more seriously as an honest, a good faith broker than our own government at this point, and anybody in it at this point, who's associated with the State Department or the regime, I guess you could call it. Certainly not Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton, John Kerry. My fear is that unfortunately, he's taken so many radical positions environmentally, and he's said some radical things, which I believe when he sort of recanted, but he said, look, I've rethought these positions. I don't hold that position. I don't think Republicans are terrorists that need to be, dealt with the capital punishment. I mean, I think, look, I mean, when you're passionate about something, sometimes you make unfortunate statements, but I mean, overall though, the things he said have been so thoughtful, and his understanding of foreign policy is unparalleled. I don't, without qualification, I say that. And I think he could really, and he's certainly against wars. I mean, he's certainly on that, and that's where he perfectly aligns, I think, with Donald Trump on the domestic side. And I just would hope Donald Trump isn't surrounded by, because I've seen a lot of them beat up on Bobby Kennedy about, he's not, he's just a crazy leftist, who happens to agree with us on vaccines and whatever, that's absurd. And if Donald Trump surrounds himself with those people, it's going to be another failed administration. But if he brings in a Bobby Kennedy, a Secretary of State, or even like ambassador to the world at large, anything, just a role in shaping foreign policy, I mean, that would be a brilliant move, and it would absolutely serve our country in ways, and it would enable Bobby Kennedy, if he wanted to, and to run for president again in 2028 and take over the to maybe, I don't know, I it's sad. I thought he would reform the Democrat Party, that it had a chance if he were to run, that you would see all the old Kennedy Democrats, but I guess they're all dead now, and the party is really just a criminally corrupt organization, unfortunately, and it's, I think it's almost beyond repair.
Do you think that ad was the right strategy? I can't.
Yes.
I can't make up my mind on that, because it's just like they're using the name. He's kind of riding on the name, but there's not a lot of substance there. But I guess if you just want to get elected,
you mean in the ad itself?
Yeah, that's
the Super Bowl ad. Kennedy. It's been stuck in my head ever since.
No, I love that. First of all, it's like, let's return to politics where it's not just some like gloom and doom, horrible, ridiculous, absurd attack on your opponent, or glossing over, I mean, some of the ads for Biden, you'd think, gee, who are you? I'm sorry, who is this you're talking about? And or any of them who run on these pie in the sky. I mean, I think it was just a throwback to a simpler time, and frankly, Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, RFK Jr. lives up to the highest aspirations of the Kennedys. So if anybody should be able to run an ad like that isn't necessarily substantive, but reminds people that, hey, he is definitely his uncle's nephew and his father's son in every respect. And I mean, I think people who attacked it, his own family members, are clueless and very cold people.
But didn't Trump meet with, just in the last week, with Tulsi Gabbard and discuss?
Did he?
Yeah,
did they actually meet?
That's what I read.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it wouldn't.
I know
surprise
he's been
me
putting
if he
out
chose
feelers in that direction to Tulsi.
I can tell you, it's not going to be Nikki Haley. That's for sure.
Oh, hell no.
We could, do the vice presidential sweepstakes. I think Tulsi would be an excellent choice. I mean, I think she brings over a lot of independent-minded people. And I don't see anything. I mean, she had a questionable gun control position for a number of years, but I think I mean, the deep state, there's so many liberals, honest to God liberals, old school liberals that a number that I've known who were maybe for gun control measures back in like the 80s, but since they've seen the growth of the deep state's tentacles and like how crazy, I mean, and ruthless and power mad these people are, they've said, you know what, I was for gun control once, but no way, not anymore. We cannot disarm the citizenry, or we will be an absolutely fascist dictatorship almost overnight. And
they're the ones that have to live in crime-ridden, Democrat-run cities. Yes. That'll change your mind on gun control when you realize that you're unarmed and a sitting duck.
Well, the same people who are targeting you for your possession of firearms while they're not prosecuting people and letting criminals, real honest-to-God violent criminals, just walk away. Yep. And decriminalizing theft on a level that they're just going in and looting entire stores, which only of course harms the community, because now you have these deserts where there's no stores anymore, and you can't get a CVS or a Walmart or anything, or a Walgreens or anything to open up, because why would they just get looted every time, and it's sad. I mean, it's the Soros DAs, it's a real thing. It's not some sort of fiction created by Republicans or conservatives. It's the things they've done. I mean, and they had to remove. I mean, look, in San Francisco, they removed that guy. I forget his name, but I mean, my God, that's not exactly a Republican electorate, and they got rid of him. So I mean, it's there's got to be such. It's these people have been betting sort of quietly, or at least under the radar, embedding themselves and insinuating themselves into so many critical institutions, and now it's all coming to a head. And it's like, whoa, I mean, the scope and scale of it is daunting for any person, and it's going to take a generation. It's not going to happen in one administration. It's, as John F. Kennedy said, it may not happen in the first 100 days or 1,000 days, or even the lifetime of this administration, or even our lifetimes. But we've got to take the first steps.
But let us begin.
Let us begin. Yes. Amen.
You know what I really liked about the Super Bowl ad that Kennedy did? It was so refreshing, wasn't it, to see a political ad that didn't attack It wasn't a
Yes.
negative ad. It didn't attack the other guys. It wasn't about who we're against. It was just about who we're for. Kennedy, Kennedy,
It reminded
Kennedy,
us
Kennedy.
you can
Kennedy.
you can have a politician running who's genuinely not some crooked, or sort of flawed character, who actually is a really good guy and can get away genuinely with running an ad like that. And as I said, should be able to run that. I can't believe a single family member came out, and it's like, my God, attacked by his own family. Like, these people are demented.
It was the Shrivers this time.
Yeah,
Not
well.
the Kennedys, but the Shriver Kennedys. And, it was a dishonest attack because Bobby Shriver said, my mother, Eunice Kennedy, would not have approved
Yes,
of
she
her
would
image
have.
being used because of his stance on vaccines. And, I've studied the presidency of John F. Kennedy for 40 years, and I love Eunice Kennedy Shriver. She was for safe and effective vaccines.
That's right. Yeah, and you know what?
And
for
that's
them-
all that Bobby Kennedy Jr. advocates for. There's
Blood
no
would-
difference.
Yeah, for them, blood was thicker than a Pfizer shot. I'll tell you that right now. For sure.
Arguably, a Pfizer shot will make your blood thick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, well, blood before the Pfizer shot's thicker than the shot, I guess. But no, I absolutely. The Kennedys were loyal to their own family. I mean, my God,
Always.
And Sergeant Shriver,
Until
Frank,
now.
I think would be like, what are you saying? Look, you can call him up personally, but you don't go out publicly and take on and denounce a family member. That's laughable. And these people clearly have not read his books or the science, or looked at the actual science surrounding vaccines, because he's 100% right. And Bobby Kennedy's Fauci book, it's almost more footnotes than it is book. I mean, honestly, everything is as meticulously detailed. You cannot, he's done a great public service alone on that front.
And the media, of course, they lie and they stress the family members who don't agree with Kennedy, but they never talk about the ones who do. Anthony Shriver is actually one of Bobby's greatest supporters. Just last week, he was out there raising money for our campaign, and they never mention him. They only want to talk about the ones who don't like him.
He was in Philadelphia, I believe. When he went independent, because I thought I saw that. Yeah, that's great.
You were there last
I was there.
October.
Sure was. Yes,
That's right. That's
An
right.
Historic day, I think. See the namesake of one of the two, best known Kennedys who lost their lives in the midst of public service. John F. Kennedy Jr. I just had Damon Issei on my show this past week, who wrote the book JFK Jr. Marked for Death, and I think the evidence indicates he was assassinated. He was assassinated. Absolutely. I mean, the plane did a vertical drop from there was no death spin. Damon Issei is a 40-year flight instructor and pilot who actually was also a fisherman on those waters in Martha's Vineyard. And he said at first he just thought, oh, well, didn't think anything of it, thought, okay, I guess he just got, caught up and lost it. And then he began studying it as a pilot and said, absolutely not. He was a very, very proficient pilot. The amount of training and flight time he had was well beyond what anybody would need. He passed every test with above average scores, and that the plane itself would never. You don't just dump into the ocean like that. And the way the angle of attack that it went into the ocean means it was straight in, almost at a negative angle, at such speed. It was like something he said 4,000 feet per second or something. That
it was a nosedive.
It was not a controlled. The way they said he crashed was he lost visual cues, and then they just crashed in the ocean. You don't crash into the ocean when you lose visual cues at a straight vertical drop, and with the tail section having been separated from the plane. There was a bomb that went off in that plane, and there were numerous witnesses who said they saw it explode in the air, and went because it was traveling in a straight line, and it literally just dropped and went straight into the ocean. And that the only thing that, as Damon said, that causes that is a loss of the tail section of the aircraft. So no, he was murdered. I have no doubt. And I had my questions for years, but after looking at the evidence, and then just the fact that the federal government immediately seized control of the search. They had, there were so many weird things. I mean, the bodies were cremated, I guess, and buried at sea. There was no, and the family, of course, Ted Kennedy, I mean, he learned back in '68. You know, you keep your mouth shut. You don't cross us. And
Well, Ted Kennedy almost died in a plane crash himself
right.
in 1964.
Yeah, broke his back. Yep.
Messed up his back for life. The other passengers died.
I think that was also no accident, and I think that sent
Often
a message.
Wondered.
That sent a message to him that I'm not gonna commit suicide essentially by crossing these people who will kill me if I do. And I've seen what's done to his brothers. I mean, why wouldn't he have taken that position? It's just out of defensiveness to him, his family. But that's why what makes Robert Kennedy Jr. such a brave soul, and why the denial of his Secret Service protection is a disgusting outrage that alone should have Joe Biden, frankly, in the dock as a criminal.
It's so vindictive. It's evil.
It's malicious beyond belief.
I think all three of us are old enough to remember the 1980 campaign when Ted Kennedy challenged the sitting president, Jimmy Carter, of his own party. And, Teddy and Jimmy Carter always had a very contentious relationship. They didn't get along. Let's be honest. They hated each other. But President Carter, to his credit, he actually used the power of the presidential pen to give Secret Service protection to Ted Kennedy 2 months before Teddy even announced his campaign back in September of '79. Teddy announced in November, about a year before the election. And it was just the right and decent thing to do for a guy named Kennedy. And Joe Biden isn't even capable of that.
No. Joe Biden he embodies every single bad, odious trait of a politician you can imagine. He is an insufferable blowhard, an egotistical demagogue. He is a liar.
Don't forget a liar.
No, absolutely. A lies like he breathes.
Like a rug.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've known this man for coming up on 40 years since I first shook his hand. They say, where are the, kind of jokingly, because Trump has all the Make America Great Again hats. Where are the Biden hats? And I have one of those foam, trucker's caps, Delaware's Joe Biden, and I had him sign it. It was June 5th or June 8th, 1984. I have the tickets. It was his Senate campaign kickoff, and a family friend said, knew I was becoming very interested in politics, although I was a big Reagan guy. And then I went to his campaign kickoff. I'd seen him in church on Sunday, every Sunday, or roughly, and then eventually went to school with Bo and Hunt and got to know them a lot better. But mainly I studied Joe Biden right from the outset. And I was not one to jump on with a Democrat. I mean, but I was I was open. I was like thinking, well, maybe I'll see what he's about. I studied his voting record and the way in various sort of extracts that I'd found at the time, like in magazines, and it was, there was no internet, obviously. And I realized, like, this man is, like, he's been wrong on a lot of issues, and voted his voting record is one of an sort of unrepentant leftist, not a liberal, a leftist, and a power mad big government guy, but also mainly just an egomaniac, a blowhard. And I began within I think it was probably 2 weeks after his campaign kickoff that summer, I went over to John Burris, the Republican candidate, and began working and worked stuffed envelopes every single day, all day, did lit drops and worked for him a lot. His campaign and the Reagan campaign that summer, I worked tirelessly. And, ever since, I've said, God help us if he ever would ascend to the presidency. I thought the American political system is smart because it was always spit out of the bottom of the Democrat primary process.
He was always a loser. He never got past the first or second primary. I remember. I covered his 1988 campaign when he was, shooed out of the race for being a plagiarist and a liar.
Oh, yeah. It was
I thought that was the end of his political career.
When
Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, you talk about well, yeah, he's like the sticky stench that won't go away. And God, we've been afflicted with him in Delaware. I mean, it just was the bane of my existence. I mean, for years, but especially when he was ramping up this drug war BS and his chest thumping, trying to out Law and Order, what he thinks the Republicans, the drug war stuff. And he's I think the system did get it right. I mean, I think the American people didn't elect him. I think that was they stole the presidency. They rigged it in every way possible. Whether you agree that there was vote fraud or not, they rigged it in terms of the money that was poured in by Zuckerberg and the media being 100% absolutely contemptuous towards Donald Trump and pumping up Joe Biden, letting him get away with never leaving his basement practically.
Yep,
not running a
COVID,
real
the mail-in
campaign.
ballots,
All of it, yeah.
the New York Post story that was suppressed right before the election.
Of all the people to go that far to do it for Biden is just like is a sin against this country. And we're seeing the results because he is not up to the job. Even outside of being demented, even if he were of sound mind, he would still not be up to the job because his character is so corroded and ill. Like he could not stand that spotlight. You could watch his withdrawal in 1987, at the speech that he gave it wasn't the Senate caucus room, but it was a similar Senate hearing room.
I remember.
And it was probably the single most honest or candid remarks he's ever given in his life. He said, "I was not an activist," and basically just made lies of everything he's ever said since about being a civil rights activist. I desegregated the charcoal pit. Yeah, sure you did, Joe.
What?
The charcoal pit being this like diner style restaurant that all the kids go to in school to get the big Sunday floats and and I run into Beau Biden there all the time. It's like an institution. Really good. If you're ever in Wilmington, Delaware, go to the charcoal pit. They have great greasy burgers and milkshakes, and it's like just like it was in the 50s.
So, Tyler, how do you restore the confidence in the system? Because I mean, even in the chat, I'm seeing people say, "I don't think there even will be another presidential election this year." People have lost faith in the whole thing. How do you, when people don't believe, when 50% of the population, one way or the other, is going to ultimately not believe the outcome of the election, how do you even have a democracy anymore? And how do you get it back?
Wow. Well, we have a republic, not a democracy. So I would, and that's right. Something I think we've lost too much because they want us to be a mobocracy in a sense, where it's just majority rules and bash down the other side, that there aren't essential human and civil rights and constitutional rights that nobody can take away from you, and those are respected, and not least being rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and justice, equal justice before the law, equal protection of the laws, due process, all these things that have been trashed to no end by the people who purport to be the great masterminds of our age, who, Donald Trump is just some ruffian who's coming and is going to upset the apple cart.
Good. That's what a lot of us voted for.
But, Rick, you asked the multi-million-dollar question, the $355 million question, which is, how do you restore? And it's going to,
there's no confidence left in the system.
Yeah, no, there isn't, and maybe there shouldn't be, because the system. I mean, until the system gets right, hey, listen, people need to frankly check out of it, because that's the only way you're going to have a normal life and survive. But we need to at least beat back. Because it's beyond, I mean, at this point, it's not even a matter of the system isn't living up to its ideals. It's corrupted, and it's dangerous, and it's criminal. So we need to at least start by cleaning up the corruption to the extent we can and getting these people the hell out of there. And even if we have, look, I'd rather leave the positions vacant than some of the people that inhabit them now. And I think we'd find that if we just shut down,
this kind of conversation makes it even worse, because people, I hear it all the time, not just you, but a lot of people. Maybe the majority of people, and it's to the point where when we saw this, we're seeing this showdown at the border in Texas, Mexico, and the funding for the defense tied to what happens at the border, and these states now aligned against the federal government, talk of maybe even a divorce between the states,
in Texas,
which
right?
Could be civil war. I think we're a ways off from that, hopefully, but what are we going to do?
Well, the thing is, I mean, people say, well, there could be a civil war. I mean, we're in a civil war. It's just not hot yet. I mean, our government is literally been taken over by people who don't represent the people and are lawless and criminal and self-dealing, and they are waging a war against the American public. I mean, when it comes to the censorship and I mean, just look at that alone. The willingness to enlist these tech, or whether they threaten them or they're in bed with them, these tech giants, to suppress people's speech and to essentially just remove the ability to have any real legitimate conversation about politics, or have any rational conversation. I mean, look, again, Donald Trump, I mean, he's a character, but he's not anything what they say. And it's like, we're not dealing in the same realm of reality anymore. And it's like, I'm sorry, but it is one side. It is not a pox on both your houses. Conservatives and Republicans generally have been just reacting and trying to deal with the fact that the Democrats have become a complete bunch of criminal psychopaths who are ruthlessly trying to destroy the fabric of this country in order to maintain perpetual power for themselves, to the point where they have essentially willing probably to kill Donald Trump if that's what it takes. And
even some Democrats are figuring that out. Ask any Democrat who tried to primary Joe Biden this year how that worked out. Bobby Kennedy had to leave the party. Marianne Williamson had to drop out of the race. Dean Phillips, God bless you, but buddy.
And that tells you everything you need to know, I think, when someone who is a genuine liberal in the best sense of the word and has been loyal to his family are the icons of that party for generations, had to leave the party. I mean, my God, I was like, wow. I mean, I was honestly shocked when he did that. I mean, I was really, I thought I had held out hope that it was the leadership of the party, the people at the top, that these were, it was corrupted. And it, unfortunately, when you get a cancer like that, it begets itself, it becomes metastatic, and that's clearly what's happened. But I thought, okay, well, he's going to have grassroots people that love the Kennedys, and they're going to rise up. And I guess he realized that, no, it's a top-down party, and it doesn't matter what the grassroots wants in the party. I would hope that that's still possible. There are people of good faith enough in the grassroots of that party to who maybe have been misled or and haven't been,
But they're not the ones who have any power in the party apparatus.
I mean, it's amazing. The Democratic Party, they call it. It's the Democrat Party because they're hardly democratic with this super delegate nonsense where even someone who wins all the primaries could be replaced by their super delegates who are just a bunch of elite so-and-sos who get, are handed these powerful positions to determine who gets to be the nominee. And they've, like you said, they didn't, I mean, my God, they had Joe Biden as a write-in New Hampshire, was it? Because they didn't want to actually have a race. In other words, how twisted is this? I mean, it's bizarre.
Yeah, and they literally threatened to take away Kennedy's delegates if he even opened a campaign office or campaigned in New Hampshire, or God forbid, won the New Hampshire primary. So they really left him no choice but to leave.
But Rick, they're thugs. You're absolutely, and so Rick, I feel your pain, man. I mean, I had the highest aspirations for a country that lived up to the ideals of, like the Tocqueville vision, the ability of our country to people to coexist peacefully and to hold different viewpoints, and for them to be respected, and that the political process works it out for the best interest of the people. But I mean, every aspect of that has been completely defiled, completely corrupted, and completely spurned by these. I just don't know where they came out of. Is it generational? But no, because I mean, you look at Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, she's just as bad as the worst demagogue from a generation before. And until we dislodge these people and remove them from power and purge for lack of a better term, the government and our civil society in these influential positions, I mean, in judges and all this, until we get rid of these people. And I mean, get rid of out of the positions. They're welcome to go and live the high life on their ill-gotten riches or whatever they have you. I wish them, health and a long, miserable life. But until we get a hold of our system again, it's just going to keep getting worse until the people, frankly, have to take the 1776 solution.
Well, Tyler, it's been building, as you know, for many years. And for the last several election cycles, more than half of Americans didn't even vote.
Yeah,
right.
And
they stayed home on election day because they don't believe in the two-party system. And I've been a third-party voter, libertarian for 30 years, and I've just kind of been waiting for everybody else to catch up with me. Now they finally have, and they realize the two-party system's broken. They know they sure as hell don't want another Biden versus Trump race, and that's why I believe Kennedy made the right move by going independent, because for the first time in our entire history, 60% of the electorate doesn't identify as Republican or Democrat. They call themselves independents. Now, whether or not they will vote that way in November, that's another matter. But I wanted to play you a clip. We caught up with Kennedy on the campaign trail.
I would point out just before
yeah.
we do that, look, Trump runs as a Republican, but he's not a conservative, hardcore, rock-ribbed conservative
True.
by any stretch. He's not been a government-cutting, fiscally austere. He really was more like a moderate Democrat for his entire political life until he realized that the Democrats have moved so far left that he could not possibly accommodate being in that party.
That's
so
right.
what I would say is that Trump in a sense is independent of the system. He's not part. I mean, in a true sense, maybe not of the. He realizes I have to be part of this party. But I mean, look, half the Republicans. Well, not half, but I mean, certainly a huge portion of them hate him and are absolutely never Trumpers. So you can't really say that he represents the Republican Party 100%, and it's he's a partisan in that sense. He's not
kind of an old New York Democrat in a lot of ways, and a lot of old school Kennedy Democrats and Reagan Democrats from back in the day voted for Trump in 2016. I'm one of them.
People. He's a working class billionaire, and it's bizarre to say, but it's true. I mean, he really does, I think, have the best interests of working people, and they love him for it. I mean, that's his constituency, and you see it. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, I had sold a car that I had just sort of a junker that was sitting out there, and the tow truck driver, he was a Hispanic, Latino, whatever, and he sort of said, I forget how it came up, but he was like, oh yeah, he immediately said, yeah, we're all my whole family, everybody, we're all voting Trump. And I was like, this is like not usual, like you would not hear Republican candidates in the past where the average Latino or Mexican or Hispanic, whatever, would be like, yes, I'm voting Republican. I mean, yes, there were inroads made, but not like where people they're openly saying, and vigorously saying, I've got everybody in my family voting for Trump now who, didn't vote for him before. So
I think the bigger issue here is who's going to vote for Kennedy, because if Kennedy can't win, then it becomes a vote splitting issue. And is he going to pull more from the Democrat side or the Republican side? I have my view. What's yours?
I think that the people. I think the people. It's not a matter of he's going to pull from anybody. It's that the Trump's base, his core voting, it's solidified. People have made up their minds. It's not going to be some like roller coaster. They have been migrating to him and being driven to him over the last 3.5 years. I think instinctively and rightly, people felt that he was cheated, and then thus they were cheated, even if they didn't necessarily vote for him. That people who are not totally out to lunch hating him feel like this was not right. And guess what? The results of that campaign have produced awful. I mean, my God, the Biden administration is a total meltdown. And just the man himself is a meltdown. So I think it's, you have to look at the dynamic that way. It's not a matter of who Bobby Kennedy appeals to. It's that who is solidified the most.
Bobby Kennedy appeals to the people who don't vote, the people who gave up on voting.
Yeah.
I
think I would say this, the Trump supporters, there's plenty of Trump supporters like me who think Bobby Kennedy's great, but we're not going to risk it. We're going with Trump
right.
because, and I think that, again, as I've said before, the only way to vindicate justice and to spurn the horrors that are being done to Trump and people like him, and is to put him back in that office and say.
See, Bannon wanted Kennedy to run because he thinks, I think still, I'm not sure if he still thinks this, but he did think that Kennedy would pull from the Democrat side and help Trump, which is why he wanted him to run. But I think it's the other way around. I think Kennedy appeals more to the Trump voters and not very much to the Democrats.
But
I can tell you, we've got a lot of former Trump voters in our fan base and campaign volunteer base.
I wouldn't disagree with that. But I would say for every one of those, there's 5 people who have left the Democrat Party and have said, I didn't vote, but I'm voting for Trump this time. I've heard way more of that than I've heard people saying, well, I'd like to go with Bobby Kennedy. Look, I respect Bobby Kennedy. I really think he'd make a great president, but I think people are looking at this as we're at war and we can't take the chance on and again, I also think the polling indicates that Kennedy would draw from the Democrat candidate because Biden's so weak at this point. I think that's what I've seen, at least in the polling data. Who's to say, though? I mean, he could just throw it into a situation where there's a belief amongst Trump people that he's doing this in order to have the sort of electoral college thrown into the House.
Yep.
Because nobody gets a majority, and then the House would elect the president, and that would be Kennedy. I don't. Maybe that's been gamed
I
out.
seriously doubt that, because Kennedy doesn't have a lot of allies in Congress. If it does go to the House,
I don't know where they got
I don't
this,
think Kennedy would come out the winner.
Well, I
Well,
think
the other
they
thing
would
about
say that he's a compromise for people to say we won't, but I don't think I think that's delusional. They're going to do anything they can to get their guy in.
And the thing that's really hurt Kennedy has been the issue in Gaza. And more than any other candidate, he's taken it on the chin unfairly. I don't even understand why. Well, maybe I have theories, but I don't have anything substantive, Fani, to base my opinion on.
Bringing it full circle, thank you, Rick.
Yeah, like it is incomprehensible to me why all the people who really were, really supportive of Kennedy running, and then October 7th happens, and then everybody abandons him and demonizes him, and yet every other candidate basically has a similar position. Like every other candidate supports Israel, but he's the one paying the price.
Yeah,
it's bizarre to me.
Well, because they think he's an apostate somehow. He's supposed to be a progressive liberal who's
You're supposed to be the anti-war guy, Bobby.
Yeah, and
that's what they say.
I can't explain his position. That's for him to do. But I think ultimately, I look to the sticker over here when it's the nation needs Nixon now more than ever. I'm kidding. Nixon's the one. I'm kidding. But I mean, you think about Richard.
Actually,
Nixon.
I agree in many respects, because I think Richard Nixon's foreign policy was excellent, actually, and his foresight, he knew what was coming. I think, if
we don't have anyone, only Bobby Kennedy really has his level of, in my view.
Yeah, with Russia, freedom really hasn't been after the fall of the Berlin Wall. We didn't take advantage of the opportunity to extend the olive branch and work with Russia, and so now we're paying the consequences of that. And
exactly,
the military-industrial, establishment, intelligence cabal that took Nixon out. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Bob Woodward was not a reporter. He was a naval intelligence officer who worked in the Nixon White House not 2 years before the Watergate break-in. All of the burglars, quote-unquote, were CIA. I mean, come on. Like, let's get real here. Let's not – I mean, the people like, say, Nick Ackerman and Jill Wine Banks, who made their, who exist as these mythical figures because they were, Watergate prosecutors, they're frauds. They're straight up frauds. And it is the worst. Besides the Warren Commission, frankly, the narrative, the mainstream narrative about Watergate is the biggest fraud on the American people. Again, besides the Warren Commission and the single bullet, Lee Harvey Oswald theory. Which is really just a theory, because I mean it's ridiculous, it's absurd beyond belief. He was an intelligence operative who was framed and murdered to silence him, and it's very sad. But that being said, no, Nixon. I mean he ended the Vietnam War, and for all the flack he took for having inherited Lyndon Johnson's Vietnam and trying to somewhat not just have us completely have egg all over our face, he did draw it down. And he certainly, I don't think, would have. He didn't initiate any other wars or aggressive moves, and he was trying to promote peace. I mean, that was what he said. The role.
What he did with China was great.
Some people might argue against that today, but I mean, I think it was either have an enemy we know or we don't know, and you're going to be a competitor, if not adversary, for sure.
When I was in elementary school, I said that in class when Watergate was going on. I said, well, at least he's trying to do the thing with China, and at least, and everybody jumps on me because of course they're all getting their information from the 6 o'clock news, and I'm like, whoa, I'm just a kid, but. Yeah,
that was the birth.
No, you were right, even as a kid, right?
Kind of.
Yeah, no, good.
Now
call.
You get the last laugh.
Yeah, it's that was the birth of fake news. That was the birth of the media lynch mob, the propaganda lynch mob that can take out a politician just by beating the drum of whatever they want to beat, no matter whether it's and it's been deployed against Donald Trump in droves. But Nixon was he was an introvert. He didn't he was kind of he didn't have like a naturally I mean, he's the opposite of Kennedy in terms of charisma, John F. Kennedy. So you can imagine, having to run against John F. Kennedy. I mean, you got to give Nixon credit. I mean, I would be
to do as well as he did.
Yeah, no kidding.
No kidding.
Well, that election was stolen too. I hate to say. I mean, Joe Kennedy.
I'm gonna have to disagree, but we'll debate that another time.
I mean, Joe Kennedy made a deal with the devil, and that's it was that close. I think.
Speaking of deals with the devil,
and that's no knock on John F. Kennedy. I don't think he was personally involved, or Robert Kennedy, or he wouldn't have gone out and risked. I mean, look, Carlos Marcello. These guys don't like being double crossed, and Joe Kennedy, I think, did that to the family members, and I think they were involved in JFK and RFK's assassination, the mafia, in other words.
Speaking of deals with the devil. There's a lot of talk, and it's been there since the day that Bobby Kennedy entered the race. Your friend Roger Stone, of course, was trying to open a negotiation between the two camps to see if maybe a Trump-Kennedy ticket might happen, which is very intriguing. Some people dismiss it immediately out of hand, but Rick and I talked about it like from day one of Kennedy's campaign. The first thing we said was, wrong party, dude, you're in the wrong party. And it took Bobby a while to figure that one out, but he did. And what Rick and I both were saying was that Kennedy would probably do better in the Republican Party. So I want to play you a clip. Bobby was asked about it in an interview recently, what his thoughts are about a Trump-Kennedy ticket. Let's hear what he has to say.
Trump and President Biden among young people. I'm beating them in independents, which is now the largest political party. So I think that probably is concerned to both the DNC and the RNC and their corporate supporters.
Could Robert Kennedy Jr. play spoiler in 2024? That's the concern for some Democrats as the independent presidential candidate pushes for ballot access in all 50 states. Right now, let's look at polling. RFK Jr. does have a decent amount of support, 18%, though former President Trump still has quite the lead over him and, well, President Biden. News Nation's Rich McHugh joins us live from West Virginia. Good morning, Rich. I know you spoke to Kennedy before his rally. What did he have to say?
Hey, good morning, Hannah. And first of all, I want to say congrats. Welcome to News Nation. It's good to have you here.
Thank you so
last
much.
night he was here. Bobby Kennedy was here last night campaigning in Charleston, West Virginia. It was a packed crowd. I got a few minutes to catch up with him before the rally. I asked him about the border. Here are some of the headlines. He says Texas and Governor Greg Abbott is in the right. Take a look.
I believe that under the Constitution, that Texas has a right to defend its border. Under Article 4 of the Constitution, the U.S. has the obligation to defend states against invasions by a foreign country. President of the United States, I would be defending it. Texas wouldn't have to do it. So I don't think that would be an issue. The President of the United States should be. This is unsustainable. It's really almost, it's a terrible, it's almost a criminal affront on our country.
He has also shifted his stance a bit on Trump's border wall. He says we need some sort of barrier.
I think previously you were opposed to Trump's border wall. Are you now in favor of it in some fashion?
Yeah, I mean, when I went down and saw the border, my mind completely shifted about what's happening down there. And that we don't need a border wall from 2,200 miles from Brownsville, Texas to San Diego. You definitely need a physical barrier in certain parts of the border.
Now, the biggest issue he faces is getting on the ballot in every single state. He's on the ballot in 2 states, New Hampshire and Utah. I'd also asked him about something I'd heard President Trump had called him early on and asked him about being his VP. I asked if it were true. Take a look.
If he asked you that today, what would your response be?
I would not take that job. And I'm flattered that President Trump would offer it to me, but it's not something that I'm interested in.
Did he reach out, or his team?
People from the team have reached out to me.
Now, I also asked him about media coverage and whether he feels that he's been essentially frozen out of the conversation by the main networks. He says, absolutely, Hannah.
Rich, I've been on the campaign trail. It's very exciting. I am curious, what was the energy like at Kennedy's rally in West Virginia yesterday? Was there a lot of energy? Did people feel like they were looking at their next president?
It was, first of all, it was packed. I mean, this is the country. We're 3 hours from any major city, but it was packed, and there was a lot of cheering and a lot of applause, unprompted. So the people here like him, and there was definitely an energy that was unmistakable, for sure.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.
By the way, I just got to say, Kennedy's rallies are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. When he was in Arizona and Las Vegas last week, the room was so full that we had about 250 people in an overflow room. And the venues that we're booking for Kennedy literally can't hold him. So it won't be long, I think, before he's filling stadiums, just like President Trump. And I think, Tyler, that Team Trump's getting kind of worried about this guy. They showed a poll with Kennedy at 18%. The latest New York Times, NBC News did a poll last week that had him at 34%. So this is a three-way race. And I know Biden's worried. If I were Trump, I'd be a little concerned. And yeah, it seems to me that the wise thing to do for Trump would be to, if you can't beat him, join him. Bring Bobby onto the ticket. Your thoughts, gentlemen, of a Trump-Kennedy ticket? Tyler, you first.
Well, I would say, first of all, Bobby's not even on the ballot in any state yet. So, that's
two. We got two so far.
Two. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. I think his border position is brilliant, and frankly, it's common sense. It shows you that he is not going to take sort of a any typical position either way. But I mean, I think he takes the American constitutional position, which is smart. I look. I mean, from the very beginning, when Bobby even mentioned the possibility, immediately I said, "My God, if we could have a Trump-Kennedy ticket." As Roger Stone, we both agreed if that would seal the election right there, and it bothers me that I hate that such a great idea, yet the forces that are in play, Bobby's obviously got to give the answer. He's not going to say, yeah, of course I'd consider that, because that gives up the essence of his campaign. I mean, no presidential candidate's going to say that until he would be willing to. But I mean, I wish they would consider it, and I think it would save this country in so many ways. It would unite so many people behind. It would bring the forces together that essentially agree that look, what's happening now is not working, and we're going down the road to perdition. And I think Bobby's views are certainly not in any way diametrically opposed on any issue to Donald Trump's positions. So it wouldn't be, and it bothers me that anyone would attack him as though he's just a liberal, he's a leftist, and for things he said in the past. I mean, Donald Trump was, come on, he donated to Clinton's, and let's get real here. So I think it's foolish of anyone in the Trump camp to attack RFK, and I think I would hope that cooler heads, I would hope that some miracle would happen where they'd realize that this is the only way we're gonna ensure the future of this country in the hands of people who care about it and aren't just malevolent psychopaths.
What do you think, Rick?
I don't think that he will be the running mate choice. I think his policies in some areas are too progressive, particularly on environmental issues. I think that it's much more likely that Tulsi Gabbard will be the running mate because
for Trump
because for Trump because she's a woman, so she will pull from that demographic for him. I think also if you look at her positions on issues across the board, they're even more in alignment with what Trump believes and what's on his platform. So I think it's more likely to be there. And there's some.
She's military as well.
Yeah, and so it's just I think too within the camps, the people around Trump, I don't think they're comfortable enough with Kennedy, much more so with somebody like Tulsi Gabbard. And so while I don't have any, inside information, that's my, if I had to pick somebody as the likely choice.
It would be a genius move for Trump to bring Tulsi on board, yeah.
And I think that seals the election as well. Either way, I think it seals the election. But with her, I think she's also probably more compatible in the work environment afterward. She's probably more likely to function better with him in a secondary role than Kennedy would be. I think those two guys might end up locking horns sometimes.
Right.
But with her, I don't think so. I think she, especially with her military background, would be more disciplined and would be more in control of her emotions.
Well, since you brought up
Right?
Tulsi,
Yeah.
I got to tell you, because I work
Your
with the
mic
Kennedy
is muted,
people.
I think there, Tyler. Couldn't hear you.
Oh, I was just going to say, I wanted to chime in on that a bit. Everyone, we run polls, internal polling with our Kennedy supporters, and everybody wants Tulsi. By a long mile, all of Bobby's supporters say that Tulsi Gabbard would be their first choice for his vice presidential candidate, and they would make a superb ticket together. And I know
Trump
that
would really have to worry.
And then Trump would have to worry. But conversely, let's say that Trump gets Tulsi on his ticket, then I'm afraid Bobby would have to worry. That would take a pretty good chunk of Bobby voters, perhaps, away from Kennedy. So that's kind of troubling right now.
So she's the kingmaker.
She is. She's in the catbird seat. I mean, she's got both camps courting her to come on the ticket. And something I wanted to bring up.
May I just say real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Tyler.
Just seeing Tulsi debate Camel Toe Harris alone would be great.
Yes.
Oh my God! I mean, it would be just
brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes. Bring it on.
Is there anybody else that's even in play as a running mate
for Kennedy?
For either of them,
Well, he's talking to Rand Paul.
That I'd be 100% about that, because I only before Trump, becoming a Trump supporter, I was a Rand Paul guy 100%, obviously, in Ron Paul. I think Ben Carson is sort of is a possibility too, because for a number of reasons, and I think he would balance the ticket very nicely in terms of his temperament, and he's a brilliant man, very thoughtful and soft-spoken man, and he's black. I mean, if you want a diversity sort of, for the inclusion of that aspect, rather than just another white male kind of thing, that he would fulfill that.
Seems like, I'll tell you this, Kennedy's two biggest obstacles right now. One is ballot access, obviously. It's so hard when you're an independent candidate. The whole system's rigged against you.
Has he ruled out the libertarian?
Not completely, no.
Okay.
Mm-mm. We're still giving that some due consideration. We'll see what the libertarians think. No one sabotages themselves quite like the Libertarian Party. So Kennedy's probably their best shot in the party's entire history for electoral legitimacy. And they'll probably screw this up.
I always have to say, small L libertarian, small L.
I'm a small L too. But, and the other big obstacle, and it's huge, is no Secret Service protection. The cost of security is just killing our campaign. And, another reason that, unfortunately, to even start a petition drive for ballot access, and several states require Kennedy to declare a vice presidential candidate before he's allowed to circulate petitions. So he has to make up his mind quick, like within the next month or so.
That's terrible.
And it is terrible. And one of the obstacles, I think one of the reasons that he hasn't found someone to say yes yet, is the question of security. If you are on the ticket with a guy named Kennedy,
you'd be the
you're
target.
taking a risk.
Sure. Yeah.
And usually Secret Service would protect both the presidential and the vice presidential candidates and their families. But when you're independent and there's no Secret Service protection, that means that the cost of protecting our vice presidential candidate and their family is going to fall on the campaign.
Yeah.
We have to pay for that.
Which states, if I may ask, require you to declare vice president before you can even
gosh.
circulate?
You would ask me that. I know there's at least, I think, 6 states, maybe more, that require you to have your VP announced before you can start a petition drive. It's a dumb rule. I don't know why.
No, it's designed obviously to keep independent candidates out of the running. You know.
You got it.
So question on the bottom of the screen for you guys.
I see that. Yes.
Vivek.
Gosh, in the cabinet, in Trump cabinet.
I don't think Trump trusts him enough to give him the position of running mate.
No. He would definitely not be a running
I think
mate.
Vivek wants it though.
Oh yeah, he wants
it.
Oh, he's a very, very sharp guy, and he's right on point. He's a great speaker. He's very charismatic and very. He's done himself a world of good with the way he handled himself when he ran, and I think that I think he could have anything he wanted. It would be interesting to see him like in the Treasury Department, head that up to stop this globe. What do they call it? This central bank digital currency, and to take on those forces in the Federal Reserve. But because he seems like he's really sharp on the economics. I mean, having created and run a company, and he's got savvy there. But I think he could probably, pretty much other than the big positions, write his own ticket. I think maybe the Commerce Department, please. I mean, it's a joke. So I think Treasury Department. Maybe. I mean, does he have the economic background? It's a great question, really good question. But I wouldn't begin to know for sure or to say what
is
that
Vivek a natural born citizen or not? I don't know.
He
must be.
Thought he was.
No, I think he is. Yeah. I think he is.
I think he's qualified.
I don't know. I know his parents were immigrants.
Yeah,
for
there's
sure.
another person running as an independent, and they're not. And
not
they're
that it matters. I
challenging
mean,
it.
because Kamala Harris isn't. Yeah. I mean, John McCain wasn't, and
questionably Barack Obama too.
Well, I just found in my archives that what appears to be a Kenyan birth certificate. That boy, if that was a fake, somebody better. I mean, they could be printing money because it was amazingly. I mean, it looked totally.
You're
authentic.
Racist.
I know. Yes, I am. Okay. I mean, my God, give me a break. It's so devoid of meaning. As I represent the first black Secret Service agent who was screwed over by the government by a bunch of racists, and about to enter his claims for. Are
you representing Abraham Bolden?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you talking about Bolden?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Tell me more.
He's hired me to put in claims. For frankly. His entire career that was destroyed, his life was destroyed, and he deserves compensation for that.
Yes, he does.
And he should be restored to the status that was taken from him as a special agent. And
that's great.
Yeah. And I will say the one thing that Joe Biden did that I could say his presidency that is that I absolutely praise him for was to pardon this man, Abraham Bolden, who has been so, oh my God, the miscarriage of justice in that case.
We've been trying to get him a pardon for 20 years.
He's been trying for 50.
Yes.
And Joe Biden did it, and I praise him up and down. I think it was a great thing that he did. But at the same time, here's the key thing is that, when he says, having considered the petition for executive clemency, I give a full and unconditional pardon. Abraham Bolden petitioned on the basis of innocence, which means that the President of the United States essentially declared this man was innocent. Or our position is that he is an innocent man, not, he was remorseful enough to deserve this. And in fact, this month, right now, they just published him as the pardon attorney. The pardon attorney's office spotlighted him. And I'm thinking, well, you know what? You destroyed his life. I mean, he deserves compensation. And God willing, this administration will not try to drag out some litigation for years and act the way they did in the last major litigation involving race and racism, where a class action of black Secret Service agents sued and won, and the Secret Service's actions in that were reprehensible. They covered up, they dragged their feet, and these guys won because they were discriminated against in promotions. And this was in the 1990s. Can you imagine what it was like in 1964?
I've heard the stories.
Yeah. Yeah. So Abraham
And
Bolden,
Trump didn't pardon Abraham Bolden. Bolden did
we
petition
tried.
Trump. We did try, and we weren't successful. But if we have President Kennedy, I'm sure that he will look after Mr. Bolden because, as you know, Abraham Bolden was the first black agent on the Presidential Secret Service detail, and he was personally chosen by President Kennedy, who met him one day and said, "I want that guy on my Secret Service detail."
Yeah, and he endured real racism. I mean, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say the N-word here. Maybe. Look, Harvey Henderson was like in the detail, said, "You know what, Bolden, you're. I'm going to tell you something, and you listen good. You're a nigger. And you're always be a nigger. You're going to die a nigger." And he had to put up with this, and and then believe me, that was the least of the long knives out for him. When he said that he witnessed misconduct on the presidential detail, drunkenness, and drinking on the job, and carousing with women and using government vehicles to pick up dates, and he saw all this, and he heard the other agents say that nigger lover Kennedy, I will not if it came down to it, I don't know if I'd protect him. In other words, saying they'd let him be assassinated, which is just ridiculous. He endured all this, and he was going to testify to the Warren Commission, and suddenly this spotless agent who is as honest and ethical as the day is long, suddenly he decides he's going to importune some guy he arrested for $50,000 to provide him supposed file that was of no use to this counterfeiter who's already under indictment, who then later said and admitted that he was basically that there was a setup, and that he was actually offered a deal and perjured himself and admitted this. And the U.S. attorney was called before the appeals court who suborned this perjury, and he took the Fifth Amendment, the prosecutor, and yet this man still had to languish for almost 60 years. And I mean, there's almost no amount that we could ask for, I think, that would sufficiently, he'll never be restored, but at least he'll know that he's been restored in terms of his status with the Secret Service and compensated, and his family. 2 of his children died before he was ever exonerated or was pardoned, and he received that. So it's very, I mean, he's a brave. I mean, the man is. I mean, I have deepest respect for him, and I'm going to do my best. And I hope, if not the Kennedy, the Biden administration, then neither the Kennedy or Trump administration will see this man and his family receive the compensation they deserve for the ordeal they were put through for decades.
Time is of the essence. How old is Abraham Bolden now?
He just turned 89 on the 19th of last month. Yeah,
I thought he was just around
you know what
90
he said?
years old.
He said, I love him. He said, I may only have 20 years left. And I said, I love that spirit,
That's so
and
cool.
I don't think he's going to give up the ghost until he's been made whole. And God
He's
bless
such
him.
a good man.
He is
such a good man.
I'm honored. I can't tell you how honored I was when he contacted me.
I love that you're working with him. That's wonderful news.
I just hope I can get the job done for him, and that they'll see reason in this matter, because frankly, they have such dirty hands. I just think that if they want to go into before a jury in Chicago, Illinois, nowadays with Abraham Bolden, I'd take those odds. They maybe end up getting paying out 3 times what we're going to be filing this claim for. So
that would make me so happy to finally see justice for Abraham Bolden. I couldn't think of anyone more deserving, and he was obviously railroaded. Anybody who takes a good objective look at the case can clearly see what happened there. And he was silenced because he blew the whistle on bad things going on in the Secret Service around the Kennedy assassination and other things too.
But also, he refused to abide the racism, the open racism that was part of that. He was prickly about that, as he should be. I mean, they would make racial jokes that were today would be, you'd be drummed out of society, out of everywhere.
Canceled.
Yeah, more than canceled. You'd be fired, and you'd be disciplined, and for statements. And he said he refused to accept that. He wasn't going to be just like, oh, okay, and go along to be one of the. And I think that that made him an outlier in that very tight and close-knit culture, along with the long knives. People it wasn't just jokes. It was animus. It was malicious, and they said, this guy's got to go. And the only way we can knock him out, because he's too clean, is to dirty him up.
That's right. He was too clean. He always lived a clean lifestyle, unlike most of the guys on the Secret Service detail. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke.
And he wasn't going to.
They didn't have anything on him. They had to literally make something up.
Yeah, and he
shut him up.
He wasn't going to cover up or let it go. When they were out of line. So
Yes.
that's what they. It was either that or kill him.
And yet here he is, almost 90 years old, and still going and still fighting.
That's right.
That's what I love about him. And I know we're just about out of time, but I just wanted to say as a final point, I'm not against the idea of a Trump-Kennedy ticket. It would solve a lot of problems for both of them. Okay, I'm a pragmatist.
Yes.
I look at it and I see for Trump, it would put him over the top for sure. It would just absolutely obliterate Joe Biden. So it's a win for Trump. For Kennedy, it's a win because it solves the problem of trying to get ballot access as an independent candidate, and it solves the Secret Service protection problem. Then as a vice presidential candidate, he and his family would then get Secret Service protection for what it's worth. I mean, we were just talking about how badly the Secret Service bungled the Kennedy assassination. But, they have improved a lot since then. Then again, you saw that incident on the streets of, I think it was D.C. recently, when a car comes careening close to Joe Biden. And you've seen the video of that. The Secret Service was caught completely unaware. It took them at least 30 seconds, maybe 40 seconds to push Biden into the car. Had that car been coming their direction, they all would have been killed. I was very sad to see the Secret Service fail in that regard. So maybe they haven't improved that much, or they're just getting lazy.
All they've done is fatten they've expanded the number of people and the number of guards. But I mean, if there's breaches or they're not doing it effectively, what good is it? I mean, all it takes is one mistake or one slip up, just like that. And but I would say just real quick that I think that a Trump Kennedy ticket would be putting the country's interests ahead of their own in both cases, and I would hope that could happen. It would not be ruled out of category.
Oh, but there's one big obstacle. There's one big problem with that. Bobby's wife said she's going to divorce him if he does that. I'm not
Cheryl.
joking.
Really, Cheryl? Really?
Cheryl's like, nope.
TDS, it's real.
Oh, yeah. So I'm afraid that might, otherwise, these two might actually, find a way to work together. But I'm not so sure if Cheryl could handle 4 years in the White House with Donald Trump in her face every day.
I don't think. I think she'd find him charming if she ever met the man and spent any time with him. He's painted. What's the portrayal of him in probably all the media she reads is a complete lunatic caricature. I mean, it's not. He's by all accounts, he is an extremely polite, respectful, kind man in person. I mean, and is funny and is warm. He's not at all this combative, Biden, on the other hand, oh my God, he's worse behind the scenes than he is in the camera.
And from personal experience, of what you speak.
Ask
but
Carroll.
The Hollywood crowd used to love Donald Trump before they hated him.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Yeah. That shows you again. It's just these people that there's certain ideological or partisan underpinnings to them that override everything, even the best interest of the country. But I would hope we can have better and more sensical or rational, logical, much less decent people and have those heads prevail.
Sadly, it seems that certainly the last 7 years in Hollywood, your whole career depends on who you voted for.
Yeah.
And if you voted for Trump, you're finished.
A word. Oh, I mean, there's people, if you even just say, well, maybe Trump isn't, even just to suggest.
You can't even say that.
No, you can't. I mean, forget being a supporter, you're done. But if you even just not, basically denounce him in the most vigorous and vicious of terms, you're out. I mean, you're not, and that's cult behavior. I mean, it's a laugh that they think Donald Trump's people are a cult. I mean, come on, get real.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I do. So, Tyler, tell us one more time where people can find you and check out the new Tyler Nixon show.
On X at Real Tyler Nixon, and on True Social, Tyler Nixon ESQ, as in Esquire, and TNTradio.live is where the show airs. It also simulcasts on YouTube and on Rumble. And it's 2 p.m. Eastern time weekdays, and it's an hour long. And it's I always aim to get on the best guests. And again, you and Rick, you guys are welcome, and I'll be reaching out to have you on as I sort of roll through that. I made this master list, and I'm trying to, kind of make it a diverse week each time. But look for me to have you on here soon enough. And I appreciate your having me. It's always a great conversation. I enjoy it's very refreshing, and I come away energized. Thank you.
It's refreshing having you on. You're actually one of my favorite people to have on the show.
Oh,
yes,
thank you. True. That's very kind of you. I'm humbled by that, and I appreciate that. Thank you. And you're likewise. I feel the same way. It's just I really enjoy this. It's not at all like, I mean, we could go on for days with it, just the conversation's great. And
I could literally talk to you for 5 hours. And that just feels like we're just getting started. I think this is about our 5th hour. If we factor in last October, we went for 3 hours that night.
Yeah, but we're not, I mean, we differ on maybe some of, certain issues, but I mean, at the core, I just, I think you're good people, and I think I'm a good person. And it's like, if this could be the conversation in the country, and this type of vibe, then we wouldn't have we would heal the divide. There wouldn't need to be the wounds, and we could move forward in a positive way with the constitutional republic and respect for human and civil rights.
That's right. That's what this country needs. We are strange bedfellows, and we're damn proud of it.
Amen.
And you're delightful. We love you, man, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'd like to thank everyone else out there in internet land, TV land. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you back here next Saturday night, 9:00 Eastern. See you then. Till then, peace.
In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.